Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday, Bayou Blitz family. Happy post-draft Wednesday. I hope all of you who were tough enough to stay tuned to the NFL draft, and especially you Bayou Blitz members, that stay tuned to our draftathon through all 3 days. I hope you've gotten some rest since then. But we'd like to welcome you to tonight's show, the Bayou Blitz post-draft apocalypse, we'll call it. I am I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to Said Apocalypse. Joining me is my apocalyptic partner, Brendan Boylan. How are you, Brendan?
Good, good. Apocalyptic. Can you spell apocalyptic?
I probably could. I am just happy I managed to not get tongue-tied spitting it out. That's a sign that I might be starting to get caught up on a little bit of my rest. From our what was it, a 16-hour draftathon coverage.
Yeah, yeah. And we said we wouldn't be on that long from day 3. Like we just pop in and out, and we said no. We just outside of like one what 30-minute break maybe.
30-minute break.
We were on the whole time. So yeah. Quick hello to Anna and Jerry. Thanks for tuning in. Jerry says the draft was a success. We'll get into kind of our thoughts on that, as I see a lot of national media are putting the Saints towards the top of
Yeah.
of the winners and losers of the draft, which personally I kind of hate when that stuff starts getting put out, because we really won't know the winners and losers of this draft for a couple years.
Yeah.
Honestly, sometimes you have like the special exceptions. And when I say special exceptions, I talk about like 06 for the Saints and 17 for the Saints, where you knew fairly quickly that the Saints had hit a home run in that draft. But those drafts don't come along for every team very often.
Mhm.
But I digress. It was a long draftathon. Um, it was a lot of wondering, not so much guessing. Because honestly, you only did one mock draft this year?
Yeah.
Like published
Yeah.
mock draft? I did a total of 0 published mock drafts for the first time in our draftathon history, and there wasn't a whole lot of like, well, we weren't really like banking on things like in years past. Like there were definitely years
Mhm.
past where we're sitting there like, what are you doing? You messed up my mock draft. Or the Olave and Penning year, you and I should have been using DraftKings or FanDuel because we would have made some money.
Yeah.
Um,
It
you know,
definitely was same with me last year, nailing 5 of those picks. I should have used some of that luck for the lottery. Might get me out of the current financial woes that I'm in.
Bob's gonna subtly drop financial woes for a while, and it may or may not, can't confirm, it may or may not be because of or revolved around the current situation involving a certain sports publishing company slash website that has been around since like the 50s.
Oh, not at all. I just need some of that sponsorship money from Great Value Coffee coming in.
Right.
And if it doesn't, I may have to start a Bayou Blitz OnlyFans page, Brendan.
You've threatened that for a while, and this company, we'll call them, I don't know, let's make up a name, Illustrated by Sports. That's a good one. May or may not kind of increase the speed of the treadmill, if you will, on getting Bob his OnlyFans page sponsored by the Bayou Blitz. But that's enough of that, and enough of you guys at home picturing that in your heads. I'm sure that's a wonderful thing to think about at 9:13 in the evening if you're on the East Coast.
Yeah, speaking of apocalyptic.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, I mean, listen, you got to do what you got to do. But let's talk about the draft, right? I guess it's good to start in the beginning. And the Saints had the 14th pick of the first round. They address, I don't even think you can use the word arguably. Like, it just is, it was. And honestly, it still might be their biggest need in tackle. In the first round, Bob, they didn't get one of those big three from tier 1, but they got the top guy in tier 2, at least on your boards.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest with you, I had Talise Fuaga ranked in my top 3. My top 3 tackles were Alt, Fashanu, and Fuaga. I had Latham and Mims ranked very, very closely behind that, and really, as we said, you, me, and Alan said on Thursday night. Those guys we felt were sort of interchangeable. We felt like all 3 of them, and this tackle draft went potentially 7-ish deep, as far as the possibility of day 1 starters. So anybody that had Talise Fuaga, mocked to the Saints with their first round pick, much like you and I with Trevor Penning and Chris Olave a couple of years ago, it didn't take Nostradamus to see that coming. Now, I will still, as you do, I will still give us pats on the back years ago, a few years ago, because particularly Olave, we had pegged going to the Saints since like that previous November. The only thing that we knew about the Saints this past November was that they needed a tackle in this draft, but they sure as heck got one. Fuaga being a right tackle throughout his career at Oregon State, very accomplished pass blocker, really showed a lot of development as a run blocker over his last year and a half. A lot of drive, a lot of force off of that edge. And some scouts, and I'll include myself in this, think he has the agility and the footwork to possibly be moved over to left tackle if a team, such as the team that drafted him, the Saints, choose to work him out that way, regardless of when some other people had him pegged for a guard. I don't see that happening. But regardless of the position that Fuaga, will be expected to play, fact of the matter is the New Orleans Saints need him, 100% need him to be a day 1 starter, and a good one right out of the gate.
I'm glad you brought up the left tackle thing because, well, let's just have that conversation now. It's a conversation we'll have from now until training camp, and then into the preseason, and then into the regular season, and probably for years to come, depending on, how things go in 2024, 2025. And that is, what is the status of one Trevor Penning? Because right now, we won't use the word Sharpie. We won't use the word penned, but he certainly seems penciled in to be the starting left tackle this season. Is that what you're hearing from some of your sources down in the Bayou, or is that still very much up in the air?
It is up in the air, but that is very much the feeling that I have. I do think that it's telling, that they went after, Fuaga, again, predominantly a right tackle at Oregon State. That doesn't mean that he won't shift over or couldn't shift over. But typically you don't want to throw too much, at a rookie, even one that you expect to start right, especially one that you expect to start right out of the gate. And as deep as this tackle draft was, even though Fuaga was at the top of the list as far as talents go, there were other tackles on the board, other tackles that went later in the first round, that were predominantly left tackles in college. So what that selection tells me is, that you have to read between the lines a little bit here, but that tells me that maybe the Saints feel a little bit more comfortable with Trevor Penning's offseason development at left tackle, than they feel comfortable with Ryan Ramczyk's pending availability at right tackle. Again, that's just pure speculation on my part, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. And again, I could be way off here. Ramczyk could be, fine-ish to start the regular season or at least begin training camp, and they could be eyeing Fuaga up for left tackle, to either to maybe compete with Trevor Penning, with the loser of said competition, being potentially worked out at a guard spot. Also, still a need for New Orleans. That's just my feeling on the matter. But I think Fuaga was drafted ideally, to be a right tackle for the New Orleans Saints.
I would say your first thoughts on all of this probably the more accurate. And I kind of chuckled a little bit when you said Ramczyk being okay-ish for the start of the season. I think I'd be impressed based off what I'm hearing if Ramczyk is okay-ish to ever play football again.
Yeah.
Let alone the beginning of the season. And we kind of talked about this on draft night too. Like, well, what are the odds hypothetically? We had a lot of hypotheticals. We were on the air for 16 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But hypothetically, like, what if Ramczyk doesn't come back this year, but the following year, maybe the knee's like 80% and you could use him as that, flex offensive lineman to kind of fill a spot as needed or be an extra blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's where he is at this stage of his career, I think that is more of a realistic goal than anything right now. That could change. Modern medicine is a crazy thing. It could absolutely change. Like Ramczyk could become the Terminator. Like, we don't know, right? They could install something in his knee. We don't know at the end of the day. But I'm with you. I think Fuaga is the day one starter on the right side. I think Penning, it's kind of crazy to say this out loud, but I think he gets his last chance to be the starting left tackle. And I say that's crazy. Some of you are shaking your heads at home going, what is he talking about? But he hasn't started, but what, not even 10 games in the NFL? Like, that's, to me, crazy to say out loud. Like, oh, he's on his last leg. And so, dude's only started 10 games. But I'm also in the boat, and if you guys were with us during the draft process, I'm in the boat that, hey, we can't give up on guys that are in their not even mid-20s yet. And obviously people 20, 30 years ago in this process didn't give up on guys so early. But we live in, and we talked about this again during the process, is we live in a world that is so much like, I want it now. Now. I made the joke that as soon as I order something on Amazon Prime, I am already tracking it because I want it the second that I buy it. Just like these teams, the second that I draft you, I want you to be an all-pro level player. Like, that is the ridiculous expectations we have for guys. Penning has struggled a lot. But when I throw on the tape, Bob, I still see that young draft prospect that we were so high on in terms of just raw ability and talent. I still see flashes of that. And because of that, I'm not ready to turn the page. I don't know where the Saints are on that. But like I said, it is crazy to think that this guy with less than 10 career starts is on his last legs in the NFL.
And hypothetically, if this doesn't work out, with Trevor Penning and the Saints, Trevor is what, 6'6", 6'7", 340, and just a mountain of a man. Someone else will take a flyer on him if he and the Saints move on from each other. But the Saints have a decision to make. After next season, after the 2024 campaign, the first round picks from that particular draft, which for the Saints are Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, they will be eligible for fifth-year contract, rookie contract options. So the Saints have to make that decision next year on both Trevor Penning and Chris Olave. I think it's pretty clear what direction they should go with Chris Olave. But with Penning, they have a big decision to make. For example, tomorrow they have to officially make a decision on whether to exercise the fifth-year option on Peyton Turner. I think we all know where this one's going. And as you would think, the current trend with Trevor Penning would suggest the same thing, that the Saints can't possibly pick up a fifth-year option, to a guy that gets beat out by a converted tackle guard. And Andrus Pete, and gets benched after 6 games, when he was being counted on to be the starter. So no, the New Orleans Saints are absolutely not giving up on Trevor Penning, and you already knew that there was going to be a wider learning curve for Trevor coming out of Northern Iowa with the even bigger jump in competition than an average rookie faces. Yeah, then he missed all of his rookie year essentially, with a chance to develop with that foot injury. He finally gets healthy. He has to come off the bench for like 5 games. Only gets one start in the season finale, essentially a meaningless season finale, and then starts the first 6 games last year before being benched. So there isn't a lot to go on, at least for fans and analysts. Coaches have seen him in practice, but again, they had to bench him last year. So no matter what they saw in practice, it's what they've seen in the games. That convinced them that at least last year he's not ready to play yet. Well, whether he's ready to play or not this year, he's going to be thrown into the fire again with a huge contractual decision facing the team about Trevor Penning after this coming season.
Want to get to some guys and gals in the comments. Sonny says hello. Hey, Sonny. Sonny was one of the people that hung out with us for like 16
Yeah,
hours.
he did.
So that's crazy. Anna says, love the draft this year. Chase says hello. Brian says, what's up? Gumbo says, losing James Hurts makes the O-line depth a little shaky. I think it was shaky before Hurst announced his retirement. But yes, even more so now. Brian asks, Brendan, are you a fan of the Saints and a reporter or just a reporter? I grew up a fan of the Saints. So it's been a blessing to have covered this team now. Oh, Lord. I guess this is the 9th year because my first year was the 15 season. Yeah, it's been a long time that I've worked Saints News Radio before Saints News Network, and then Saints News Sports Illustrated, and now Bayou Blitz on Saints News, I guess. So some affiliation still. So it's been a long time, but all right. So we talked about the first pick. Let's move to the second pick.
Before we do, I want to address the guard depth. And like you said, we all knew that we all felt like that was a shaky position even before Hurst announced his retirement. The Saints did sign officially yesterday, guard Shane Lemieux, former starter for the New York Giants, and guard Justin Herron, former, we'll call him a 6th offensive lineman for the New England Patriots a couple years ago, been buried on the bench with the Raiders for the last 2 years. Lemieux is an interesting signing. He was a highly regarded guard coming out of Oregon, same year as Justin Herbert came out. Won the starting job with the Giants as a rookie, but since then has dealt with injuries. And when I say dealt with injuries, I mean season-ending injuries in each of the last 3 years. Knee, toe, and biceps. I don't even know if I have that order right, but those are the 3 injuries. And of the last 51 games, Shane Lemieux has appeared in 6 of them. So that's obviously concerning. But remember, he was, again, a highly regarded offensive lineman, coming out of Oregon, has had success in that zone blocking scheme that we think that Clint Kubiak is going to run. And we talked about it all 3 days of the draft coverage, that we fully 100% expected the Saints to pursue at least one guard one veteran guard right after the draft. We were right about the move, wrong about the person. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Well, let's move to the second pick, and then we have another signing to get to that kind of goes hand in hand with pick 2. So, the second pick of the draft was a little bit of a surprise, right? The Saints were initially slotted to select at 45. They trade up a few spots, giving up 2 day 3 picks to move up. They select Kool-Aid McKinsley out of Alabama, the corner. One of the highest rated corners in the draft, perhaps the best man-to-man coverage corner in the draft. Had a first-round grade by lots, slips into the second round. I want to say foot or leg injury
But I think it was foot.
that had him slide a little bit. But the Saints see an opportunity. They go get him. Bob, will start here before moving into, I'd say, some of the questions that have been really circulating around the Who Dat Nation. And my first question for you is, A, do you like the pick? B, what makes Kool-Aid a guy that Saints fans will likely become a fan of fairly quickly?
The pick took me off guard. Took all of us, you, me, and Alan off guard. When it was made on Friday. But the Saints, as the Saints do, they identified a player on their board that they loved, and they went to get him. And it's noteworthy that they traded up. They gave up very little to move up to get him, by the way, because right after McKinstry was picked, two other cornerbacks went off, boom, boom, in the next two picks. The Saints, Mickey Loomis, seeing maybe not far into the future, but far enough to be effective. And while the pick took me by surprise, I love the player. As Saints fans, I think you're going to love the player. As Brendan said, an accomplished man-to-man cornerback from the SEC conference, which is obviously the highest from top to bottom, highest level of play in the NCAA conference-wise. And Kool-Aid was a guy that the Crimson Tide could kind of put on an island and just not worry about. Quarterback. He didn't jump off the charts, the page statistically in his final season, 2023, because quarterbacks just simply didn't throw his direction. He was that good. And as good as he is in man coverage, I love his ability to read a wide receiver, and anticipate their breaks, his route identification, with excellent closing or recovery speed, if he's in off-ball duties. So, plus, he can play the slot, which is an area that the Saints struggled in last year. That is going to be his immediate contribution, but his ability to play man-to-man as an outside corner is going to open up versatility usage for both Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo, and definitely Alontae Taylor. I think you're going to see all four of these guys move around a lot. Maybe one or two of them, your best man-to-man guys, Lattimore and maybe McKinstry, are going to shadow, the most dynamic receivers that another team brings. And as our friend Mike Detillier always says, there are three guys that you always have to have. Always. The guy that throws the ball, the guy that puts the guy who throws the ball on his back, and the guy who breaks up the throws. So, the Saints still questionable on the guy that throws the ball, maybe. Still very questionable, in my opinion, with the guys who put the guys who throw the ball on their back. But I defy you to name me a cornerback unit in the NFL that even comes close to what the New Orleans Saints have in the foursome of Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, and now Kool-Aid McKinstry. And we addressed this not only on Friday night, but all through the day on Saturday. A lot of people, especially the negative Saints fans, automatically assume that this meant Marshawn Lattimore is going to be traded. I don't see that whatsoever. Not for 2024 anyway. This pick was made with an eye towards 2025. But Kool-Aid is going to give you immediate value in the secondary this year. It was made for an eye on 2025 for this reason. Marshawn Lattimore's cap hit over doubles in size. Plus, Paulson Adebo is in a contract year this year. In other words, you could potentially face the prospect of losing both Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo after this year. I certainly don't see a scenario where the Saints are going to be able to keep both of them. Hence the Kool-Aid McKinstry pick. Immediate value with an eye to the future. So I love the logic behind the pick, and I love the player that they used to get it.
It really caught me off guard. And I think, and we'll talk a little bit further about this too when we talk about like grading our drafts to this point. Even though at the beginning I said I absolutely hate grading drafts, it's unfortunately, whether you like it or not, it's a part of this business and something we have to do. But I remember day 3 going, I don't know how to grade this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I referenced that pick with Kool-Aid being one of the bigger pieces of that puzzle because it was like great value, kind of one eye here and one eye into the future, but not the biggest immediate need. When picks like that are made, much harder to grade the pick in the moment than 5 years down the road if they can't, keep one of the two guys that you just brought up. Or worst case scenario, they can't keep either of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kool-Aid is clearly your number one guy. It's a lot easier to make that grade there than it is right now, especially picks like that. First off, I love the pick for all the marketing that is going to happen for Kool-Aid, the person, New Orleans, the city, and the New Orleans Saints, the NFL franchise. Like, I think as someone who's been in the marketing field before, that is just a gold mine waiting to happen. The Superdome better have some mixed beverage available at games that's named after that kid. And then virgin versions of that drink as well. Because God, I mean, you could have kids lining up at the concession stands for Kool-Aid. There's so many possibilities there. It's going to be fun. I think you get a really aggressive guy at corner, a guy that can be a difference maker, like you said, a guy who can play in multiple spots. Some insurance moving forward, which it's been a little weird. Like we brought it up, we'll continue to bring it up. Like the Marshawn Lattimore potentially leaving New Orleans conversation. I hate to say this out loud, but I think it's almost inevitable because of how long we've been talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I apologize for the interruption. A year ago at this time, we were saying the same thing about Michael Thomas, that it felt inevitable, that it was going to happen at the conclusion of this past season. We didn't think it was going to be as ugly as it was, but we felt it was going to happen. I'm almost starting to feel that way about Marshawn. No, Marshawn is not going to get traded on June 1st or June 2nd. But as it stands now, I find it a little bit difficult to believe that Marshawn Lattimore, barring not only a major mending of the fences, but also a major redoing of his current contract, both of those things have to happen. And those aren't small achievements. Both of those things have to happen, not just one, for Marshawn Lattimore to continue to be a Saint in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I really don't. And it's like we were on the same wavelength, which a lot of times we are. But I was about to say this is starting to feel a little bit like Michael Thomas with how long that conversation drug out. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of where that plays over the next 12 months, maybe not even full, maybe 10 months. It'll be weird. But like I said, I really felt like that was a pick that had kind of 1 foot planted in place and 1 foot planted moving forward. So you kind of you don't even kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You like wound 2 birds with 1 stone. They're still flying. You got 1 death. Let's talk about maybe is controversial the right word? It might be. The most news getting, the flashiest pick that the Saints, is that the best word? Flashiest pick the Saints made in the draft?
That it is. You could make a strong argument for that.
And damn, we waited a long time on day 3. It felt like forever.
Yeah.
And it really was. It was, what, 100, almost 110 picks in between the second round selection at Kool-Aid and 150, where the Saints selected Spencer Rattler, which we got that news a little bit quicker than the people watching the ESPNs or the NFL Network or whoever you were watching in your draft coverage. We got that note quick, and I know how I felt when I read it out loud, but I didn't see myself. I think
you saw me.
I quickly I had to toggle between screens, but I think I was like laughing a little bit, like in disbelief. But the Saints selected Spencer Rattler at 150. I said it then, I'll say it now. You don't have to keep counting anymore. It's not the draft-a-thon. On paper, or in Madden, I love the pick. Like, if I'm sitting at home and I'm doing a Madden franchise and I see a quarterback who has, like, a ceiling that's that high in the 5th round, I'm, like, grinning ear to ear. I'm like, yes, like, I'll take him. But the scary thing about not just the selection, and we'll get into it, and we'll get into whether we liked the selection or not. I think the scary thing with Spencer Rattler is this in his career. And some people say it, and I agree, is like, it's good to see the kids overcame some adversity already. I'm in favor of that, but we watched this kid be one of the top prospects in high school, get on that Netflix show, which reportedly hurt his draft stock. And I want to talk to you about that too, because I think that's wild, but we'll get into that. But you have all that, was that QB1 or whatever on Netflix? And then you got Oklahoma, and people are saying, oh, this is like the first like surefire number 1 pick in a few years. And then it went south hella quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided to go to South Carolina, which a lot of people questioned at that time too, saying of all schools, like, yes, you're playing in the SEC, but of all schools you would have went to, you went to South Carolina, like one of the laughing stocks of the SEC, and being in the Carolinas, the laughing stock of the Carolinas. Considering, Duke's been good, North Carolina's put out some good product, Clemson's been Clemson. And he had a couple good years at South Carolina. I believe they actually knocked off Clemson one of those years too, and beat Clemson for the first time in however many years. But had some good years. But it's kind of like what I was saying earlier with Trevor Penning, is like, you still see these flash in the pan moments, but there's other times on tape and you're just like, what the hell is going on? Some of that could be the product of playing at South Carolina.
Yep.
But we don't know that. So, Bob, and I said it on draft day, because it wasn't draft night, draft day at that point. It is silly to get too high or too low as an analyst on a 5th round pick, but fans can be wherever they want to be.
Yeah.
Your analysis of the pick 1, and then Spencer Rattler, the quarterback 2.
First of all, I'm going to say this for what has got to be the 250th time, since Saturday afternoon.
No more than that.
I'm ballparking it. Spencer Rattler was not friggin' drafted to succeed or replace Derek Carr. He's a freaking 5th round pick. You don't draft day 3 players to with the expectation that they're going to be a starter, let alone an immediate starter, or with an eye to replace a star. You just don't at any position, but especially quarterback. Yeah, I know the names. Dak Prescott day 3. Brock Purdy, day 3. The almighty Tom Brady, day 3. Tony Romo, undrafted. Those are 4 examples. Think of how many quarterbacks that were day 3 picks that you never heard of again. Aiden O'Connell, got some starts last year too. So, take that with a grain of salt. Spencer Rattler was drafted, because Clint Kubiak liked his fit for the system. That's something that you, me, and Alan Ulrich called, from the opening gun on Thursday night of the draft. Is that the New Orleans Saints? We all felt it. We all predicted it. We all said it. The New Orleans Saints will draft a quarterback in day 3. We didn't predict what round, and we didn't predict what quarterback, but we knew it was going to happen. Spencer Rattler was drafted as a developmental project with Clint Kubiak liking the fit in his system, and the only person Rattler is going to provide immediate competition for is Jake Haener. That is to back up Derek Carr. And hey, you never know. I love the teams that consistently draft quarterbacks in day 3, because it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what will stick. Something is always bound to stick, and that is how you find your Brock Purdy's, your Dak Prescott's, your Tom Brady's, with that kind of approach to the draft. So I like the approach to the draft, but I'll tell you what I don't like, and this is why I graded the Saints draft with an overall grade much lower than many other people did. Because the Saints went from pick 41, second round, to pick 150, mid to late 5th round, without drafting a player. And then when you have your opportunity to draft a player, it's a guy who is he's just flat out not going to contribute in 2024, barring Titanic-like tragic circumstances. So I really didn't, for Dennis Allen and the rest of the staff who are presumably coaching for their job, to go so long without a pick that you expect to make an impact, some sort of impact in 2024. That's why I graded the draft lower than most. Now, Rattler, as I said on our telecast on Saturday, of the quarterbacks that were remaining on the board at the time, he's not the one I would have picked, but I'm not the one making the selection. I'm not the one whose system he has to learn and perform in. So I acknowledge that. We all should acknowledge that, whether you like or dislike Spencer Rattler. But as a prospect, I do see underrated arm strength. His release and delivery is excellent. It's just it's a natural motion. He brings a swagger and maturity and toughness that I like. The film that I have seen from the beginning, even his first year at Oklahoma, when he was anointed, the next Heisman winner and the next #1 overall draft pick before he fell in hard times and got benched. Even then, his footwork and overall lower body mechanics have vastly improved. Even in his final year or so at South Carolina, he does have the patience to go through his progressions, and he has solid intermediate accuracy and ball placement when he gets the protection. You can't overlook the fact that he was benched at Oklahoma. You just can't. I've always questioned his ability to read defenses, and I will continue to do so until he proves me wrong. And when he is on the move and flush, he's not a top tier athlete, but he's athletic enough to escape from pressure. But when he does, his accuracy really, really suffers. So that's something he's going to have to work on. That's a coachable tendency, though. Again, I like his toughness and his willingness to stand up against the pressure in the pocket. But he needs to improve his composure and overall release when he does so. And he's not the first. He's not the only quarterback to struggle. I mean, if I had multiple 290 and 300-pound guys bearing down on me, there are going to be a lot of things that suffer about my composure and technique too. But those are some of the things that I see from Spencer Rattler that need to improve. But I definitely see the developmental upside, and I definitely see why Clint Kubiak likes him, for his specific offensive system.
I'll echo what you started with. And I laughed during our draftathon because we said the same thing. Like you had said verbatim, word for word, the same exact thing about Jake Hayner last year. And that is like barring an apocalypse, to go all the way back to the beginning of the show, like Spencer Rattler will not see the field this year. Spencer Rattler might not see the field at all next year. He was not drafted to be the heir apparent. And it makes me chuckle when I see these posts by the Bleacher Reports and whoever's of the world, because guess what? They did the same exact thing when the Saints drafted Ian Book a few years ago. And I could have told you, just watching Ian Book's tape, I was like, yeah, no.
Right.
No. Like, do I like him as a potential backup? Yeah. Do I like him to be the heir apparent? No. Spencer Rattler, I think I would like a little bit more because I think the ceiling is much higher.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I think that the kid had one of the highest ceilings of quarterbacks in the draft that was not named like Caleb Williams and Michael Penix. And I'm including like Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy. Like, I think that Rattler has a higher ceiling than some of those guys. Now, the floor for Spencer Rattler is a lot lower than some of those first round picks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the arm strength that Rattler has is next level. But we've also seen dudes with great arm strength that just really sucked at the NFL level. Right? That does not mean anything. You know, if going back to Madden, your throw power can be 99, but if your accuracy's in the 50s, you're not playing. I think Rattler matured a lot during his collegiate career. I think that he has the potential, like I said, to be a starter in the league at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not going to be anytime soon. I think I like Spencer Rattler, the prospect, more than I do Jake Hayner, the prospect.
I was going to ask you that. That was going to be a potential daughter drop I threw at you.
Oh, man. I do. I like him, the prospect, a little bit better. But that's all he's there to do is compete with another quarterback prospect that was drafted by a different offensive coaching regime, right? That's all it is. Like, in all honesty, could I see a situation where Hayner and Rattler are both on the roster next year? Yes, I can.
Really?
I can. I don't think it's one of those that they just give up on one. And when I say on the roster, I should expand that. Roster also including the practice squad.
Okay.
Right? So
That's fair.
Not quite the 53, but it's the, what are we at? Almost 70 with the practice squad nowadays.
Right.
So I could see that happening. But overall, did the pick confuse the hell out of me? Yes. Because like Bob said, they had waited 100 picks. And it was like, okay, well, that was the guy you went to go get. And if you wanted that guy so bad, like I didn't see the and I don't know. We were not in the war room. Maybe they were making calls looking to trade up. I don't know. But if that was your guy, I would have felt like there would have been more of an urgency to get up to go get him. Especially because for some people, he had a late day 2, early day 3 grade.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us were surprised that it took that long for him to come off the board.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking someone would take a flyer on him. I see your comment, DJ, and I completely agree with you. It's a change because it's the Kubiak system. Rattler probably fits that system a little bit better. And the nice thing about that system for Spencer Rattler, too, going back to his arm strength, is he doesn't have to rely on that.
No.
Because the Kubiak system is going to work that short to intermediate. It's going to make him become better as an accurate passer. It's going to make his footwork be better, but it still does take advantage of the fact that, like Bob said, maybe not great mobility, but mobile and athletic enough in that system to roll them out, give them options where you can dump it in the flats or you can take off. Like there's a lot of things there and things that we saw on display at South Carolina and Oklahoma for Spencer Rattler. That's enough about the quarterback.
Consider this real quick before we move on to the next next pick. One of my favorite phrases since he's been hired, since Clint Kubiak has been hired, is the Shanahan-Kubiak system. Because this is a system that was not only pulled from Clint's father, Gary, but derived also from Kyle Shanahan, which was pulled from his father, Mike Shanahan. So we're going all the way back. You can even trace it back to Bill Walsh if you want, or Mike Holmgren. But certainly Mike Shanahan and his success, you could trace all the way back to the early 90s with the Denver Broncos. But the Shanahan-Kubiak system has had very successful seasons from the following quarterbacks. Be it Denver, Washington, Houston, Minnesota, San Francisco. Brian Greasy, Jake, third round pick. Jake Plummer, second round pick, but a cast off that his previous team had given up on him. Kirk Cousins, late day 3 pick. He's been in this system twice, once with Washington and then once with Minnesota. Matt Schaub, I think he was a mid-round pick. Jimmy Garoppolo, yes, second-round pick, but a cast-off traded from his original team. And, of course, Brock Purdy. I think that list speaks for itself. In other words, the Shanahan-Kubiak system, it's been called quarterback-friendly. But my point is that late-round quarterbacks, kind of overlooked quarterbacks in the draft or quarterbacks that were cast-offs from their previous teams, they've had success in this system. So, I'm not discounting the fact that Spencer Rattler, or for that matter, Jake Haener, could turn out to be a star. But you don't draft quarterbacks in the 5th round with that expectation. I say it for the 251st time.
There you go. My last thing on Spencer Rattler, and I did want to just get your quick insight on it, was what I said at the beginning. The report from Ian Rappaport, one of our favorite guys, reporting live on television that Rattler's draft stock was allegedly hurt by the negative persona that was showed during his high school days on the Netflix series QB1. 2 things. 1, how much of that do you actually believe? And then 2, as a Hall of Fame high school coach yourself, yeah, I gave Bob Rose that Hall of Fame, HOF, for life. How much stock do you put in on a 16, 17-year-old from that point in their lives to 22, 23 years old? And I should expand on that, not just as a high school coach, but a father that has, done that once, going through it a second time, and you got Will coming behind as well. Where are your feelings on all of that, considering, the people you've mentored in your life?
I mean, first of all, any report that comes from Ian Rappaport should be taken with a grain of salt and a raise of the eyebrow and a shake of the head. But I hope that's not true. I hope that Spencer Rattler's draft stock wasn't hurt or wasn't hurt significantly by something that he did as a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. Because, all of us think of the differences in our personalities and maturity levels, from that age, from 15, 16 until our early 20s. The differences are night and day. You are a completely different human being. Now there are some exceptions. If you are a blatant racist, a criminal, a bona fide criminal, or some kind of offender, then that's, to me, that's a stigma that should stick with you for the rest of your life. That's the punishment. But it was nothing that about that, with Spencer Rattler. But we've heard this in recent years, and it's the time and age that this society is toiling in. Is that social media and the internet? It ain't going away, and you can't erase it. So we have heard other draft prospects, their draft positioning being affected by tweets they made when they were punk kids. They were stupid, insensitive, sometimes worse. But I hope it's not true. That the immature idiocy that most of us were at age 15 or 16. I hope that whatever Spencer Rattler showed didn't affect his draft stock negatively. And if it did, anybody that holds that against him, folks, it's time to move on. I promise you, he's a completely different person. And even early in his career at Oklahoma, you were hearing some rumblings, that he had a little bit of maturity issues and things like that. I think at South Carolina the last couple years, it's very clear he's overcome that. And I'm glad he's getting his shot. His shot to make, you presume he had a dream of playing in the NFL from the first time he picked up a football. Now he has a chance to make that dream come true. So I'm happy for him. So if his draft stock was affected by that, I'm hoping that whoever passed on him for that reason lives to regret it. I hope Spencer Rattler becomes a big success and makes them eat that decision.
I think it's silly. I couldn't imagine my current life situations being determined on how I was when I was in high school. Thank God I didn't have cameras on me following
Right.
me around while I was in high school. I'll share this quote and we'll move on. Comes from one of my favorite shows of all time, Ted Lasso. Quote is, "I hope that either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strength we show when and if we are ever given a second chance."
Fact.
That's just what it is. We can't be judging kids for what they did when they were 16, 17 years old. Okay. Mic drop. All right. The rest of the draft, as I guess we'll go over a little bit with you guys since we started late. Bub Memes was the next pick, the wideout. Bob was not a huge fan of this selection. Means coming out of Pittsburgh, right down the street from where you are, but
Yeah, strike one.
But he also spent some time at Tennessee and Louisiana Tech before ultimately landing in Pittsburgh. He has some good measurables. Scored really highly in the tests that the Saints just live and die by. And I don't know why that is, but I feel like we talk about it every year. It's like, oh, they got a high score. That's the Saints prospect right there, moving up the boards. What did you see on tape when it comes to Bub Means? As he got compared to a ton to one of your favorite Saints of all time, Traquan Smith.
I'm going to bypass that one because it's just too easy. And I'm gonna keep what I said in private about that. I'm going to keep that in private because let's just say it was not complimentary I've never been complimentary to Traquan Smith, but it was certainly not complimentary to Bub Means. He has a nice straight line speed. He is a bona fide vertical threat. At least he was in college. He has good. Shows me the ability to pull away late in a route. Which tells me that if he gets a step on somebody on a crosser or a post pattern, or certainly a deep route, that he's going to pull away and he's a big play waiting to happen. He has a really nice vertical leap. And a decent catch radius, so he's able to high point a ball in traffic. He does, and this is the other thing that stood out to me on tape. He has a very, very good ability to make a play, on contested throws. But this brings me to my number one biggest negativity about him. It's a good thing that he is so skilled at the contested throws, because he has shown me zero ability to separate with route precision or variation in his routes. I mean zero. Capital Z, capital E, capital R, capital O. A one-trick pony. Now we've seen receivers make an NFL career out of being a one-trick pony, so we'll see if that's the case with Bub Means. But I'd like to see him show better zone awareness too when he does or against off-ball coverage. I've already said that he doesn't have the route precision, so defensive backs are going to be able to jump his underneath routes. So he's got to show better awareness that way. Got to use his body a little bit better to box out defenders, which actually on tape he was able to do in contested throws. He showed me a lot of inconsistencies in his ability to slip by the press. One game I'd see him be able to do it very easily and very efficiently 2 or 3 times, and then another game, a good physical press just completely nullifies him. So he has that ability. You'd like to see him do it, and again, you need for him to put together any sort of NFL career, he has to at least develop a sliver of route precision and a sliver of an ability to run a route tree. But before I say that, and I said it the day that they made the pick too, in the 5th round, 170 overall, there were about 8 receivers on the board at the time that I would have preferred taking over Bub Means. But again, it's noteworthy. Who am I? And I think I said it on the telecast. Who am I to question a team like the New Orleans Saints that had so much success with Lance Moore, undrafted, Marquez Callaway, undrafted, Marcus Colston, 7th round, Deontay Hardy, undrafted, Rashid Shaheed, undrafted, Jawan Johnson, now a tight end, but a receiver at the time, undrafted. A.T. Perry, 6th round. Brandon Coleman, undrafted. Now a couple, Callaway, Coleman, not stars by any stretch, but still made contributions in the NFL. So, that's a pretty significant list of names, including a couple of the best receivers in New Orleans Saints franchise history. So, Bub Means comes in as a 5th round pick. He has an opportunity to add his name to that list.
You forgot a crucial name on that list.
I felt like I was as I was saying it.
Keith Kirkwood. Yeah, that's not where you thought I was going. You thought I was actually going to give you like a name that you were actually but you forgot the hero, the hero from Neptune Township, Keith Kirkwood.
Well, but you make a point. I mean, if I'm gonna include Marquez Callaway, who did lead the Saints in receiving 1 year, pathetic number, but still let him. Brandon Coleman, Keith Kirkwood, again undrafted, but has stuck around in the NFL for 5 going on 6 years, caught a couple of touchdowns. In other words, he's made a contribution. And as an undrafted guy, the odds are heavily against you even making an NFL team, let alone sticking around a couple years and making some plays.
Yeah, and remember, he left for Carolina for a year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So multiple places made some contributions. All right, let's keep going with the draft as we're running out of time here. Jaylan Ford was the next pick 175, the linebacker out of Texas. It was a name that we brought up a lot. Where we're going through potential prospects that were kind of falling. A guy that you really liked a lot, a guy at 6'2", playing at linebacker, a guy that there's some concerns with him covering players deep. You said a kind of similar to your analysis of Pete Werner, but with his size and weight, could end up being pretty effective on tight ends and running backs within like a 5-yard, maybe 5 to 7 yards from the line of scrimmage, just based off of his frame.
Yeah, I love the Jaylan Ford pick. You, me, and Alan all mentioned the possibility of the Saints grabbing a linebacker, maybe even trading into the 3rd round or 4th round to get one. They didn't, but coming into day 3, Jaylan Ford was one of the linebackers I was watching. As he tumbled until ultimately the Saints got him at pick 175 and the overall late in the 5th round. And I made the Pete Werner comparison as far as man coverage skills. And Jaylan Ford is going to struggle a little bit in wide zones, but unlike Werner, Jalen has very nice ball skills, in off-ball coverage or against bigger tight ends or in short zone or tight zone duties. His strengths are definitely he's an aggressive downhill linebacker with great size, as you mentioned, but outstanding physicality. He's going to be the kind of guy with the strength to stand up a blocker and just stuff running plays. And he does have enough athleticism and physicality to ultimately develop into being able to playing all three linebacking spots for a defense like the Saints. He'll have to show better awareness. I didn't like his his instinctive play was a little bit inconsistent at Texas, especially at middle linebacker. But you're not going to throw the defensive captainship duties on him. He's going to get to learn behind one of the best in the game in Demario Davis. Pete Werner's going to get snaps. Willie Gay's going to have to get snaps. So Jalen Ford's going to have a chance to get time to develop. And this could be a very key developmental pick. Willie Gay is only on a one-year contract. Demario Davis may or may not be able to defy father time, but nobody else has ever been able to do it, for an eternity. So he's 35. Pete Werner, last year his contract. Jalen Ford really has a chance to carve out a role, immediately for special teams and situational play defensively this year. But if he does well and shows some developmental traits, the ones that I just spit out, you could definitely see him, being a potential starter in 2025.
It was a pick that I liked a lot. I'm glad you brought up Demario. That's a thing that I think we've talked about a little bit more over the last couple of years. That does not mean that his production has decreased at all. But as soon as you start seeing that age number go up, you go, how much longer do we have? And typically, and you can speak from experience as well, maybe a little bit more experience than me, there's not a lot of times where it's like a slow decline on players. A lot of times, I'd say 95% of the time, it's like they hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest examples, and it's maybe not fair because of the injuries, but man, Peyton Manning was one for me. Like, breaks Breeze's passing record that one year. I know how you feel about that, so we won't even get into that.
He did. Go on.
But throws for 5,000, almost 5,500 yards, and then the next season, like, can't push a ball further than like 20 yards downfield. And you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And it goes that quick, and that goes for any position. So that's one thing I'm definitely keeping an eye on. I think the Saints' 6th-round pick excited a lot of people just in terms of value. So let's talk about Christian Boyd, defensive tackle out of Northern Iowa. I think it was Pro Football Focus had him as the 7th highest rated defensive tackle in the entire draft, based off of grade. Now, playing at Northern Iowa is not the same as playing in the SEC, but a big body dude that showed a lot on tape, would be a project, but could certainly find himself in the rotation a little bit as a rookie. Bob, what did you like about this pick?
I love Christian Boyd coming into the draft, and the mock draft that I did, and pat myself on the back. I had the Saints picking him. I had him going earlier than the 6th round, so I was still glad he was on the board. And like you say, the film that I saw, he's just a pure power player. Great strength, squat frame, 6'2", 328. But plays with good leverage. It has the frame and the power to command double teams automatically, but still be able to kind of push his way into the backfield. Love his base against the run. He was almost immovable at the point of attack. Clogs inside rushing lanes, but has an underrated pass rush too. Again, it's all power, no finesse there, but collapses the pass pocket pretty consistently with a pretty decent first step quickness. You know who he reminded me of? If you're making player comparisons to New Orleans Saints, Malcolm Brown. and what Malcolm Brown was able to do for this defense. Malcolm Brown, very adept, terrific run stopper, underrated pass rusher. But again, there was no finesse in Malcolm Brown's game. He just pushed people backwards, whether it was a one-on-one blocking or double team blocks. And I just like draft grades, we hate making player comparisons, but you're almost forced to do so in this job. A and B. When you watch film, it's human nature to say, "Oh, yeah, this guy and style of play. This guy reminds me a little bit of that guy." I'm not saying he'll be Malcolm Brown, although if he turned out to be, that would be a great thing. But I think it's noteworthy that everything that I just said, Christian Boyd was able to throw a lot of people around at Northern Iowa. Just like with the power that Trevor Penning showed us at Northern Iowa. Such a big jump in competition, you don't have that advantage week in and week out anymore. So Boyd is going to have to develop the technical part of his game. He's going to have to disengage with blocks a little bit better, going to have to develop some counter moves, not only in his pass rush too, but against the run. Otherwise he's going to get cut at the knees or just kind of pushed out of a play. So he's still going to, and that's why you called him a developmental project. But here's the thing. The Saints have Brian Brisset. The Saints have Nathan Shepard. Those are going to be your primary two defensive tackles. You hope to get some better defensive snaps from Kalen Saunders this year. So all the Saints really need Boyd to do is carve a role out in this rotation, a la Malcolm Roach, who was an early down guy, very good against the run, a quality rotational player, and also undrafted. So, I think it's a fair comparison, to make between the two there. And if Christian Boyd can develop how I think he can, again, just a guy that's able to get some push inside, clog those inside lanes and take up other blockers. That's going to free up other one-on-one opportunities, for especially the Saints edge rushers, but Brian Brisset in the middle too, and also Nathan Shepard.
I'm glad you said that. Like, if you can get even decent production out of a 6th-round pick out the gate, that's a W. And I think that at least on tape, a lot of us could see that happen with this kid. And so I think that's why a lot of us were excited about it. Now, finally, the Saints draft another offensive tackle. A guy at 6'5", almost 330, you could see bumping inside, potentially. But Josiah Izerum was a guy who didn't play offensive line until 2021. His first 19 games in college were played at defensive line. Made the switch. Believe it or not, happens a lot at small schools.
It does.
A lot when they see that, hey, like your feet work, your footwork, we could potentially see this happen. And so he ends up bouncing over and becomes an FCS All-American, a first-team All-Conference, and starts 11 games at right tackle. Like I said, could definitely see him bump inside with that size and weight. Not a whole lot of tape on a guy from Eastern Kentucky. But the one thing that a lot of people did see was his reaction to being drafted. And when you see videos like that, it's really hard not to root for the guy.
Yeah.
The Saints are really thin at offensive line. When you're drafting the 7th round, there's no guarantee you make the roster. But what are some things you like about this kid based off of what you've seen on tape and what you've heard? Like I said, I know it's hard to get tape out of Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, and I tried right after the draft pick was made. All these other guys I knew coming into the draft. I'd looked at film, and had my own draft grades, my own draft analysis. Not Josiah. I had to go film hunting. But the main thing that stood out to me was the footwork and the agility, and that's, as you said, that's the whole reason why they moved him from defensive line to offensive line. And if you get if you get a guy that's 6'5", 6'6", 330 pounds with agility and a little bit of power, and he does have some power, there's going to be developmental traits there. You give me a person with footwork, and I can make a lot out of them. And that's what gives him a shot. His best chance is to be able to show these coaches he can play at least semi-effectively at both guard and tackle. Because, as you pointed out, I mean, Trevor Penning, Flaga, Ramczyk, if healthy, Landon Young, you'd think. But outside of that, who are the locks to make this roster at offensive line? It's definitely an area of opportunity. For Josiah and a couple of these undrafted linemen. And we'll talk about the undrafted players next week because I'm just too damn tired tonight. Josiah's best opportunity is to show these coaches that he can be effective at multiple positions because that's how a backup lineman, offensive lineman, is going to be able to stick around. But yeah, I mean, his agility and his footwork are what stood out to me the most. I'd like to see him develop his power a little bit more. And certainly the technique is going to come. You can't knock a guy on raw technique when he's only played position for less than 2 years. So I'd like to think, and that's going to be on not only Josiah, but a testament to the coaches too if they can develop his technique.
Yeah, and like you said, when you see the footwork, the athleticism, the agility, and you see how successful a guy can be only playing a position for 2 years, taking a flyer on him makes a lot of sense. A coachable guy, we hope. Honestly, I think one of the better things that could happen out of this is seeing him make the practice squad and having a full season to really learn the position. Let's get to some daughter drop before we say goodbye. Actually, no, we can't get to daughter drop because we have to give draft grades, and then we can get to a short miniature version of daughter drop because I guess I stole one of yours earlier. Grading this draft. Like I said during the draftathon, I thought it was going to be really hard because you could make the argument out of their top 3 picks, they only addressed one immediate need. I don't even know if that's an argument. Like, I think that's just fact. I'm not as high. Like, when I started seeing A grades, I was like, ooh, people feeling really generous. Yeah, maybe for value, like those top 3, like I think you got good value for where you selected them. But just because you got good value doesn't mean it's an A when you look at the roster. So this is how I'm going to break it up, Bob. If we're talking about grading the value of the selections, I'll give the Saints a B+. Right? I think they got good value. Even going all the way down to Jalen Ford, I thought they got good value for where they found some of these guys. I might even move them up to an A- because I said Jalen Ford. I really think that they did well. Now, the draft itself, I think I'm generous giving them a B- in the draft because they did not fill immediate needs. They didn't after the first 2 picks, none of those guys in the 5th round, 6th round, 7th round are even guaranteed to make the roster, right? And none of those guys are going to make an immediate impact this year. When I say immediate impact, I mean like starter or heavy rotational guy. Like we talked about Christian Boyd being a guy who could crack the defensive line rotation, but we're not going to sit here and be like, man, look at Christian Boyd being this huge force. Like we're going to go back and look at the stats and look at the snap number breakdown that comes out on the Saints News Network every week after every game. We're going to go, oh, look at that. Like, Christian Boyd played 18% of the defensive snaps. Like, we're happy to see that. And then the next week, we're going to be like, oh, look at that. He got up to 24% of the defensive snaps. Like, good job, Christian. We're not going to sit there and be like, wow, Christian Boyd played 75% of the defensive snaps. And he had 2 tackles for loss last game. Like, that's not going to happen. Right? We're not gonna flip the game on and be like, oh my God, Spencer Rattler beat out Derek Carr for the starting job. Isn't that wild? Like none of that's gonna happen. So, like, I think I'm generous giving them a B- just because it felt like this was a year where they could. How do I put this? for a team that has been so stuck in the we can win the NFC South and we can compete, we just got to get in the dance for however many years that's been the mindset, 3-4 years now, that's been the mindset. This did not echo a draft of a team with that mindset. This echoed a draft with a team with the mindset of we'll get them next year. And that's what my biggest problem was with the draft.
My biggest problem with the draft was the fact that between picks 141 and 150, they didn't have a selection. First of all, anybody that gives the draft, most of the national analysts were the ones that gave the Saints an A, for their draft grade. And I contend this: if the Saints wouldn't have drafted the Saints only got that grade because they drafted a quarterback. Could have been as late as the 7th round, they would have gotten an A for. That's just fact. And the short-sightedness of most of the national media. Okay, just about all the national media. But what stood out to me was the fact that the Saints didn't have a pick between 41 and 150. And again, even at 150, no disrespect to Spencer Rattler, the player, but even at 150, you have a player that you have no opportunity of contributing this year, not even on special teams. So between picks 41 and 170, you didn't really have a player that is going to contribute for you this year. To me, that has to significantly drop any team's draft grades. It certainly did in my view. Love the Fuaga pick. Love the Kool-Aid pick. I do think Kool-Aid is going to make an impact this year. Despite the fact that he doesn't fill an immediate position of need, he's going to have some sort of impact. Fuaga, as we said, this draft lives or dies by him. Frankly, the Saints and probably Derek Carr as a human being lives or dies by him. After that, I love the value with the Jalen Ford pick. Love the value with the Jalen Ford, Christian Boyd. Love the value with those two picks. I think that they could be, they could potentially be real gems. But as I say all the time, and as I certainly said through our Bayou Blitz draftathon, when you get into day 3, and definitely when you get past round 4, or once you're into 5, 6, and 7, you're literally drafting one of two things: either the best, truthfully, the best player available on your board, or the player you see fits your scheme best, whether it's offense or defense. You can't predict, you can't say, the 5th, 6th, 7th round, even 4th round for most of the time. You can't say, I think this guy's going to be a starter. You can't even say, I think this guy's going to have an impact. Because as you said it, statistically, the odds are against them even making the team, with each subsequent later round. So you can only guesstimate. But I do like the Ford and I do like the Boyd picks. I think they have the real chance, at turning heads the most, as far as early on in their careers. I like all the players that they drafted except one for sure, and then another one I would have went another direction, and I think I made that pretty clear in my verbal analysis on day 3, my verbal analysis tonight, and my written analysis on the network. But I mean, overall, I'm with you. I'm in the C+ B- range because I like Fuaga and McKinstry so much. I'll keep it at a B-.
Yeah. We'll go over undrafted rookies, and there's a lot of guys that some Saints, or maybe not a lot. There's one or two Saints fans are pretty excited about on that list. So we'll definitely get to that next week. Real quick, Bob, one question each. Daughter drop. I stole one of yours earlier. I apologize. My daughter drop to you is daughter drop. The Saints 2024 draft class will produce at least 2 Pro Bowlers. We're talking hella early predictions.
Yeah, but I mean, I was gonna give you a hella early prediction too. I think that's an easy dot. I love McKinstry and I love Fuaga, and I think those are your two Pro Bowlers. So yeah, I'll dot that. If you said three, I'd have given it a just as resounding drop, but you went easy on me and went two. So yeah, I'll dot it.
Yeah, I went over under 1.5. I mean, it's not too hard. Not too hard. It's late. You got
right.
Slack.
Dot or drop. In 3 years, Kool-Aid McKinstry will be the best player in the 2024 New Orleans Saints draft class.
That's not the way that I thought. Let's see. I thought you were saying in 3 years of Spencer Rattler, the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, and I was like, "Whoa!"
that would be the about face of all time from me, and I don't do a lot of about faces, but that would definitely be a drastic one for everything that I said coming into the draft about whoever they would select at quarterback. Then after they made their selection, and then tonight, and then I go and pull that one. Yeah, no. No, I'd never do that.
I'm glad. I'm gonna drop it because I really think Fuaga is gonna be the best. Now, best is determined, and the definition of best is different to everybody. Like,
sure.
Kool-Aid might be the best, sexiest pick of this draft.
Fair.
Right? Not a lot of people walk up and down the street and be like, "Man, remember when we drafted insert offensive lineman here?"
Talise Fuaga is the face of this franchise.
Right, like that's not going to happen. But in terms of Kool-Aid could be like the best defensive player for the team and whatever. Like I could definitely see that. And if I'm being honest with you, the only offensive lineman I can think of right off the top of my head is like, man, that guy ended up having a really good career. And it's only because, and this is my father's fault. So, Dad, if you're watching, this is your fault. It's the 2006 draft. D'Brickashaw Ferguson. 1, because of the name.
Yeah.
2, because my father was like, man, I don't know. Like, if Reggie Bush comes off the board, like, you got to go D'Brickashaw Ferguson, right? Mm-hmm. Because you got to have a long-term solution at tackle. So, anyway, and Gumbo just said if the 06 draft was an A, then this year's draft is a C at best. Time will tell. Time will tell. Bob, real quick, you've had a lot of work over the last however many days it's been. I don't even know what day of the week it is. It's Wednesday on a Wednesday for the first time maybe ever. But where can everybody follow your work as you continue to pump out some information about the draft class, the undrafted rookies, and some of these signings the Saints have made as well?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to continue to do so over the next few days. I've gotten most of the draft picks down. I got Jalen Ford coming up next. And then I'm going to do some of the undrafted guys, including one in my backyard and Slippery Rock University wide receiver Kyle Sheets. I'm trying to get together with either he and or his coach. So stay tuned for that one. I got some feelers out. I'm going to be doing pieces on, still available free agents too. And as we mentioned tonight, the Saints have signed a couple of them, and I don't think they're done yet. No splashy signings, but I don't think they're done yet. So stay tuned to that. And in the meantime, you can follow me. My personal page is Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R. 2613 on Twitter, and make sure that you continue to follow, support, and bring other fans into the Bayou Blitz Facebook page and the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. We thank you guys for following us during our 3-day draft coverage, and of course for tuning in with us week in and week out. We're going to continue to give you content, analysis, and we're going to throughout the off season. And now that the draft is going to be put in our rearview mirror, we could start to bring some of our guests and friends, old friends back, as well as new guests too. We didn't want to overshadow them and their career achievements during the draft process. So now we can focus on them again as we should.
Absolutely. I got a good one in my backyard. Former New Orleans Saint that has already expressed that he'd love to come on. Bob's point. Last thing you want to do is throw that right in the middle of all the chaos of the NFL draft. So we will have some new faces and some friendly faces back for you guys here real soon. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Make sure you follow us, the Bayou Blitz, on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod. We'll have some more fun giveaways coming up. We'll have some more fun guests coming up, and as always, we'll have some great laid back. I'd like to think that we're laid back, but laid back conversation when it comes to New Orleans Saints football. So until next week, hope you guys have enjoyed. Hope you guys have a good rest of the week and enjoy some of that summer weather that a lot of the United States is starting to get. We just skipped spring. We're just straight into the summer. I got pools open here in North Carolina already.
Awesome.
That's wild. That we're May 1st, we're already opening up pools. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it too. Until next Wednesday, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. See you next week for the Bites.